On this report, we talk about the intersection between global climate change and agriculture. This is Switzer Network News.
My name is Doreen Stabinsky. I'm a professor at the College of the Atlantic in Bar Harbor, Maine, and I'm policy advisor on climate and agriculture for the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy.
I'm Karen Hansen-Kuhn. I'm International Program Director for the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy. My focus is on international issues, although most of my organization focuses on issues of domestic production, on local foods production, farm to school. And in our international program, we're looking at the kinds of trade rules we need, issues of food price volatility, and the kind of agriculture we need to confront climate change moving forward.
Climate change is here, it's now, and it's about food. Policymakers often say, well, we'll just import food from somewhere else when we have a decline in food production this year. That's not an assumption that we can work on. It's not an assumption that we can work on with climate change, because we could have a bad season here and that could be replicated in places all over the world.
We were really fortunate to get a fellowship for Doreen Stabinsky to work with us. She's an expert on soil carbon markets, climate and agriculture essentially.
Of course, there are really serious politics at the global level. I mean, the geopolitics of sort of power and who has and who hasn't, they work themselves out in global climate negotiations as well. But because agriculture and these impacts on agriculture are so urgent, there's a need to address them within that dreadfully political context, and a need to address them now and in a way where we actually start addressing the problem.
She is doing some research now on the development of soil carbon markets.
Commodifying the carbon in soils or in trees.
She's looking at how those proposals are being developed both by national governments and in the UN climate talks, and helping to explain who's driving that discussion so that we have and delegates in the UN talks have sufficient information to make those decisions before we get there.
One of the things that developed countries would like to do and attempt to do is to shift the burden of mitigation somewhere else. It's going to be really tough, frankly, for us to change our systems here in the developed world enough, to reduce emissions enough, to stop the kind of impacts that we're seeing right now in agriculture. And that's where most of the effort ought to go. But there's this unfortunate sort of shifting of attention towards planting trees somewhere else, towards supporting agricultural systems that take some carbon out of the atmosphere and put it in the ground somewhere else in order to relieve ourselves of our burden. And so getting people to understand that this offset, when you want to offset your emissions, actually it's not a solution. And it's not only is it not a solution, but because it allows us to continue emitting without addressing the real problem, we continue to have impacts. We continue to put greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that will continue to increase global temperatures, that will continue to make yields fall.
I hope she can help us to understand better some of these issues around how carbon gets sequestered, like what are the solutions for climate and agriculture. I think there are a lot of ideas out there. I think agroecology is part of that. I think really examining this idea of soil carbon sequestration, which is something new, is a part of that, but we need to be developing alternative approaches that really make sense.
To learn more about the work of Doreen Stabinsky and the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy, please visit their website. This is Switzer Network News.